welcome to ISC News. Today our topic is the Cold War and what led to it. More information in Curitiba with our reporter Victor.
Hello Nicole, hello Brazil. We're here today with Pedro, one of the greatest historians of all the Americas, who has agreed to speak with us about this topic. We're going to start with the basic question. What is the Cold War and who was in it?
So, the Cold War was basically the fight between the United States and the Soviet Union. They both wanted to dominate international affairs after World War II, and even threatened each other with nuclear bombs, creating crises like the Cuban Missile, Vietnam, Hungary, and the Berlin Wall, just to name a few.
The crisis that you just mentioned, the Cuban Missile, what was it about?
Well, the leaders of the United States and the Soviet Union were currently in a 13-day military standoff in October of 1962 because of the installation of nuclear-armed Soviet missiles on Cuba, which was a problem because it was only 90 miles from the U.S. shores. So President John Kennedy gave notice on national television about the current situation of missiles and made it clear that the U.S. was prepared to use military force if necessary and if the situation was threatening the
After World War II, we could only assume that the United States and the USSR would maintain their friendship. What happened?
Well, that is because even before the war, America and the Soviet Union were not very friendly with each other. They only became allies during the war because of their mutual enemy, Nazi Germany. So even so that Patton, one of America's leading generals, said that America should unite with the Wehrmacht in 1945 and utilize their knowledge in military and fight the Soviet Red Army.
Very well. Now let's skip to the question everyone wants to know. Why is the Cold War called the Cold War?
This is because there was never an actual war. The US and the USSR never really fought in direct military confrontation, but they frequently threatened each other with nuclear bombs and were involved in proxy wars, meaning they supported allied nations in big wars like Korea, Vietnam, and Angola.
After all, what were the main differences in thoughts between America and the Soviet Union?
So, the main and most obvious one was that the Americans were extreme capitalists, while the USSR was completely communist. With this main difference came all the small ones. The fact that the United States was democratic and had free elections, and the Soviet Union had no elections and lived in a dictatorship, and the US was the richest and most powerful nation, while the USSR had a very poor economic base. Also, with the US having personal freedom and freedom of speech, the USSR had total censorship and was controlled by a secret police. As you can see, it is the small differences like that within a country that can create a rivalry between two.
Thank you, Pedro.
It was a pleasure, Victor.
The Yalta Conference was extremely important to the Cold War. The meeting was intended mainly to discuss the re-establishment of the nations of war-torn Europe. Within a few years, with the Cold War dividing the continent, Yalta became a subject of intense controversy. The three leaders wanted to keep peace between post-war countries and other things like that on the Eastern Front. All sides agreed at the wartime conference at Yalta to the earliest possible establishment through free elections of governments responsive to the will of the people. Despite their many differences, the Allies were among the nations that agreed to the creation of the United Nations in October 1945. It would be a supranational organization dedicated to keeping the world peace and security. The United Nations created a powerful Security Council responsible for maintaining international peace. Recognizing that peace could be maintained only if the great powers were in agreement, the UN founders made certain that the Security Council consists of 5 permanent members and 6 rotating elected members. The United States, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, France, and China, the members of the full Allied alliance in World War II, are the 5 permanent powers, and their unanimous vote is required on all substantive matters. The decisions of the Security Council are binding on all members. Their worst fears were realized in 1946 and 1947, when the Soviets helped bring communist governments to power in Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Poland. Communists had previously gained control of Albania and Yugoslavia in 1944 and 1945. Both the US and the USSR also participated in the so-called proxy wars, where the other countries fought on their behalf. A considerable amount of the maneuvering and manipulation of other countries were carried out secretly away from the public eye. For more than 40 years, the Cold War hung over global issues and affairs,
shaping the world with military buildups, nuclear threats, spying, and massive technological competition, as both the United States and the Soviet Union trying to gain the upper hand in the preparation of proxy wars that everyone feared would someday come. Next time on IC News, you'll see the causes of World War II and the battlefronts. Thank you for watching and see you next week.
RPC TV. Agora, Amor à Vida.